Alright, here is the second part of Big Boss 1233's commission. It is Dimitri. Now, everybody sit comfortably because we have got quite a lot of backstory for this character. Perhaps one of the longest I can think of, because this character goes way back to the origins of the Knuckles standalone comic and continues on right up until the Super Genesis wave hit. Alright, so who is Dimitri? Dimitri was one of the great-grandkids of the Echidna who first rose Angel Island. In comic book continuity, the Echidnas were a technologically advanced civilization who used the power of a dozen Chaos Emeralds to raise the landmass that their mighty city stood on to protect it from the impact of a comet. This was only possible with the aid of some fire ants, but that's besides the point for this story. So, after a couple generations living up in the sky, there were some Echidnas that wanted the island to be returned to the land. The problem is that if you remove the 12 Chaos Emeralds from the crystal chamber in the center of the island, then the whole thing would drop out of the sky like a stone, destroying the city. Dimitri, along with his brother Edmund, Edmund being the first guardian and distant ancestor of Knuckles. Oh yeah, that kind of makes Dimitri Knuckles' distant uncle. Although it's been so many generations that technically speaking he's also Julie Sue's distant uncle. Look at that. Anyway, in an attempt to lower the island gradually, he invented a device called the Chaos Siphon, which would slowly pull the power away from the Chaos Emeralds and lower the island at a safe pace. The plan backfired, as you're probably aware, creating the Chaos Energy-infused power-mad incarnation known as Enerjack. Yes, Enerjack. The Chaos Siphon, turns out you can't drain infinity, but he caused enough strain on the emeralds that he actually destroyed 11 of them entirely, infusing his body with their power. A single Chaos Emerald with its infinite power could still keep Angel Island aloft, but this guy, well, those aforementioned fire ants, they collapsed his evil spire on top of him and he remained trapped under there for centuries. When he dug his way back out, he made himself the Grand Master of the Dark Legion and attempted to conquer Angel Island and Echidniopolis. Legion, of course, being made up of followers of his son, who chose to embrace the technologically advanced lifestyle, including outfitting their bodies with cybernetic augments. This is something that mainstream Echidna society had rejected, and they had gotten banished to the Twilight Zone because of that. No copyright infringement intended. Upon being freed, he tried to convert Knuckles, and when he failed, he chose to kill him instead. Don't worry, he got better, thanks in part to the Ancient Walkers. So, during one of his big campaigns against Echidniopolis, Mammoth Mogul came in and used the Sword of Acorns to steal the Chaos Energy from his body, reverting him back to his normal self and aging him several centuries at once in the process. So, this meant that in order for him to stay alive, he'd had to rely on these cybernetic augments that his the little cult of personality that had been following him had embraced all this time. Oh my god, look at this. Doesn't this just check every single mark on the 90s comic art bingo list? I mean, you have an asymmetrical design, check. Sharp edges that look like they'd be extremely painful to anyone who tries to touch it from the wrong side, check. Ludicrous levels of detail so that anyone who tries to use this for sequential art would either go insane from stress, kill themselves, or end up being really far behind on their update schedules, check. And, of course, a bleached out color palette that just looks so bleak and dreary, check, check, check. I mean, Oh my god, what were they thinking when they designed this? I know they were going for like a hodgepodge look, but you could accomplish that with so much less of a busy design. Fortunately, more sensible minds would come along and the character would be drawn a little bit better later on. And it turns out that with the chaos energy removed, a lot of his sanity had returned. So instead of wanting to wage war against the Echidnas, he actually spoke about reunification, getting the Dark Legion to reintegrate into Echidna society. The problem is that now he got pushed back from the Legion itself. At this point, the conflict had been waging for so long that it had become personal, and a lot of the Dark Legion members didn't want to reintegrate with Echidna society. And also, by the way, despite all the cybernetics keeping him alive, what was left of his body was still degenerating, so they ended up having to put his head in a pod in order to keep it alive. Thus began the reign of Dimitri's severed head. Of course, this head was plug and play and could be installed onto new battle bodies, but, we only ever saw that a couple times. After the whole Iron Dominion story arc, where Lin Da had taken over the newly formed Dark Egg Legion, after a whole bunch of Enerjack-related nonsense, Dimitri, in an attempt to save what was left of his people, came back to the freedom fighters in Knothole, hoping that they could provide some help. This phase of the comic ended with Dimitri reconciling somewhat with Knuckles, and it seemed like he would be helping everybody, to try and make a better future. In the 25 and 30 years later arc, he actually did help do this, and amazingly enough, he was still alive after all that time. I think if I had to live as a head in a jar for 40 years, I'd be like, you know what, just unplug me, folks. Yeah, so that being said, we're going to actually get around to making the toy, and of all the incarnations that Dimitri ever had, from his original physique, to being the first Enerjack in the comic, to being a crazy hodgepodge cyborg, of course, the one that I'm going to make is the head in a jar itself. So let's go ahead and make our head in a jar. Alright, so we begin with Knuckles' head. The dreads on this one are already a little bit shortened because this is from that big care package of miscellaneous parts that Strapper sent me. Now, I will always wonder how the hell Strapper does this. He found a way to pull Knuckles' face off from the dreadlock part of the cranium. I didn't even know that those were two separate parts until I saw him do it. And I don't get how he does it. It's just so weird. Alright, but I didn't actually have to do that, I just wanted to show you. So I cut all the dreads off as far as I could get them, while leaving a little bit of red in the sides, and then sculpted on a bunch of bits. Those random plugs in his skull, the big triangular left eye, the giant cyber eyebrow, and a whole bunch of jointed looking parts on the dreads. Then I had to sculpt in some new dreadlocks so that they could curl inwards, and then paint everything up. It's a big silver head, and I left most of the dreadlocks red because in later interpretations he basically had them red, even though I will eat my hat if there was anything organic in there. So all that leaves is the jar to put it in. This was the most difficult part of the project. Well, not really difficult, but yeah, it is really hard to find a round, clear thing that you can put a head inside of. The same thing happened when I was making those Pikmin customs, and I was trying to find something to use for Olimar's helmet. It's just really hard to find these things. So this, my friends, is a rock candy car charger. They're sold in these little Christmas ornament-looking ball things that are nice and transparent. I thought of using a gumball machine bubble, and Big Boss actually recommended that, but all those are like frosted plastic that you can't see through easily. It wouldn't really work for this look. So once I got all the blue stuff off, I was left with a nice clear dome, which I just kind of glued the head into. And there you go, you have a head in a jar. That's Enerjack. Formerly, the Echidna formerly known as Enerjack and currently known as Dimitri. I also put some nubs on the bottom of the ball so that it wouldn't roll around too much, because that could cause a head to get disconnected. And I put the head in such a way that you can take the two halves apart and get an unimpeded look at the face. Well, thanks for watching this video.